then coming to point 2. So they would take dying tissues, put it into resin, put it into thin slices, look through with the electron microscope, and then they see typical structures of dying tissues. They called villi. So the mass of tissue tries to grow, you know, like an amoeba. And those structures, when you cut through, they look spherical when you look through. But in the end, they are not spherical, right? So these particles, they would claim, oh, they are representing a virus. But they never ever proven that they isolated those particles and did the biochemistry. So in every paper on SARS-CoV-2 or any other virus, HIV, measles, you'll find the same pictures, but never the claim that they were isolating these structures and looking if they will find the core of the virus, the genetic material. Never ever, you must imagine. So they show something, but they forgot to do the biochemistry. And in this step 2, they never did the control experiments with exactly same treated tissue cultures, whereas the infected material has been sterilized, right, by radiation or heat or whatever. They never did this. So in this step, they are anti-scientifically as well. Now we go to step 3. They show us other kind of particles. Those are the photos where we see several particles lumped together. Of course, they are stained. Electron microscopy is always black and white, but those are the typical particles showing, look, this is SARS-CoV-2 from an isolate, right? So, and what they are doing, they take the liquid of the cell culture, spin the material down, the proteins, and sear it up with a pipette. And there we have the proteins, the fatty acid, and the detergents. So what they are building bubble soaps. Really, it's a soap opera. when we want to be funny, right? And then they put stain in it, let it dry, and then they take the photograph. So, and what as well, excuse me, I have to block my phone. What is same is happening is that they never did the control experiments with uninfected cells, but equally treated. And those particles never ever had been isolated and biochemically characterized. In order
just to be clear on this, though, just to be clear before we continue, from your perspective as a virologist, has any virus ever been isolated and proven to cause disease in a healthy host?
No. And I mean, this is the right point to say, of course, the short answer to your question is no. But now the explanation why they are believing that they have a virus, right? And so we have to go a little bit only back into history. And in Germany, we have a real nice paper, a review of the Max Planck Institute for the History of Science. And it was published in 1999. And it's on the history of the early virology, right? And this paper shows that till the year 52, we had a virology which is completely different from the virology nowadays. And this virology had been abandoned. A virus was thought to be a protein, a toxic protein, right? And till this time, till the year 1952, it was believed that proteins are themselves the genetic material. So they have the possibility to self-replicate, right? So a short stop, I can't stop these things. I have to write a short message.
You're good. I want to finish these 7 steps.
To this question, right?
Okay.
To explain why they are believing they have a virus, we have to know that we had another form of virology till the year 1915. And this virology abandoned it themselves because they did control experiment. Till this year, a virus was believed to be a protein on its own, a toxic protein, like the toxic proteins in bacteriology. We still believe that we have a tetanus toxin, a botulinus toxin, right? So, and till this year, it was believed that proteins are their genetic material on their own, right? Mm-hmm. And in this year 52, it was shown that proteins do need a nucleic acid in order to replicate themselves, right? Mm-hmm. And from this time on, it was believed that we have a genetic material, the nucleic acid, and this is needed to build a protein. So, and the control experiment showing that when they let healthy tissues go into decay and do their filtering, they came up with the same proteins. This was disproving the old virology. And you can see all those details in this review work. And that the most important, that all attempts to transfer the disease to other human beings or to animals never ever worked and materialized. So, and then what happened? It was found in the field of in the field of bacteriology that when bacteria have no ability to maintain their life through radiation, a sudden offset of nutrition, if you breed them high, replicate them in high numbers, all of a sudden they die, but they would not only die and decay in all its pieces, but they would transform themselves into smaller particles. And those smaller particles are called the bacteriophages. Mm-hmm. And it was believed, and is still believed, that those bacteriophages are the viruses of bacteria, right? Therefore, bacteriophage, phage, phagocytosis, so to eat something up. But it's not the case. And we have, of course, hundreds and thousands of different bacteriophages isolated in the literal word, separated from anything else in high number, and showing that they all have a certain set of proteins. And every isolate of the same phage showed the same number of proteins and, most important, the same nucleic acid. Always a given size, a given structure, and a given sequence. So this is what was the model of the new virology. And it was a bacteriologist who said, look, we don't know what viruses should look like. The old idea has been abandoned, but let's try to see if we can at least multiply viruses like we do it with bacteriophages. And he did exactly the same. He plated not bacteria, but he plated cells in a test tube. He flattened tissues, right? And then he would use antibiotics to claim no, bacteria would not kill the cells. He would starve them a little bit so they would get hungry to eat and take up the virus, right? And then he would take the control experiment. And this was John Franklin Anders. In the 1st of June, 54, he published this speculation. He named it a speculation that this could be a mean to multiply viruses, right? This was done in the field of measles virus, right?
But to be clear, he introduced an antibacterial that was really in a traditional sense poisonous to the cell, also starved the cell, and then he is claiming, oh, this could be how we replicate a virus.
Yes, he was a bacteriologist. He was doing his PhD on bacteriophages. This you have to see, you know. And even he studied before different things. He had not studied biology, so he was not aware about the scientific principle to question yourself, and especially to question your own technique, which you introduced, in order to avoid and to prevent that the technique itself is giving you the result, right? That you are not fooling yourself. But this is exactly what he did. Even so, he warned in this paper, and Dean is able to show this paper, and in your interview, you should give a link that the people can see.
Dean, if you could send it to us afterwards and we'll put it in the show notes, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. And this paper clearly shows that the cells even dying without adding infected materials. And he said, well, there could be a virus already inside the tissue. Those came up all from the kidneys of monkeys, or that there's an unknown factor, but he never controlled this experiment. Never. I mean, and what happened? A half a year later, on 10th of December 54, he got the Nobel Prize, but not for this speculation, for another speculation in the old field of virology, of a finding of him of the year 48 on the so-called poliovirus, right? And if you look on this, for this time we should have you going into this detail as well, you see how ridiculous this is. In the old field, in the old virology, you took just a slice of a diseased organ and you said, this is the virus inside. And then you took a slice of an organ, which is from a healthy person, and you put the diseased slice on top of it. And then the next day, when you have a circle of decay around, then you would believe, oh, the virus is spreading, diffusing, and multiplying itself in the healthy, in polio, it was a slice of a brain of a deceased human being. And in fact, it was a colleague running into his lab. He was at the children's hospital at this time in Baltimore. Yeah. And then, I have the polio virus. And he said, no, I have no slice of healthy brain. And in order to throw it away, then I'm working with chicken fibroblast cell cultures. Let's put it on this, because we don't know when we get a healthy slice of brain again. So the next morning they saw why in a circle around the dead piece, of course, brain, they thought, oh, the virus, it's multiplying in other cells than thought. And this was a revolution in virology, because till this time it was believed the virus is causing disease only and replicates itself only in the tissue it's going to disease, right? And this notion, wow, what fantastic. So the virus could replicate somewhere else and then doing this disease in the nerve tissues, right? And this became a revolution. And somebody took this notice. This was Jonas Salk. He bought every human embryo, took out the skin of the embryo, all the muscle, put it in the fermentator, a slice of diseased brain, get it all into fermentation. And then, of course, he had to stop somewhere the decay. So they added toxins, glutaraldehyde, right? Aldehydes, in order to stop the decay. And then he used this as a vaccine. And he claimed, at least the New York Times claimed, that he did the control experiment on its own with his family. Yeah. And that the vaccine works perfectly, and he became rich. But all the scientific community, and you find it on the web page on Jonas Salk and the polio vaccine, they hated him because they knew that he was stealing the idea that viruses are not tissue specific. So he could buy all kinds of embryonic tissues and generate huge amount of vaccines all of a sudden. So before it was much complicated. This was a detail. And of course, John Franklin Anders was upset on this. And so he went into measles vaccine, and he said, look, probably we can produce the measles vaccine with this technique like we did in bacteriology. But phages are a scientific fact. You can see them in high amount already when bacteria is going into transformation, building those mini